Okay, bring to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today I have a really cool review for you from the brand Alexander James Watches. Now, those of you who are big fans of the channel may recall this maker, but a little bit about this brand. Essentially, these are hand assembled in Chicago, Illinois, and the brand was a start out, as many kind of watchmakers do within the Seiko mod space. And, basically Alexander wanted to bring something of his own to the market. And he has since had quite a line of very cool, more original pieces. This particular piece is a traveler's watch, some key characteristics and design language. When you're looking for something within this space, of course, you're gonna be looking for that GMT or world timer function. So you're able to track multiple time zones with relative ease. This is his A4 Prelude 37mm GMT in the white snowflake dial, and it's a remarkably compact adventure watch that combines equal parts style and capability. You can actually get these for $325 direct, or at the time of filming this, actually I think they're currently on sale for $300, which I think is a steal. This is using the Seiko Instruments NH34A GMT movement, which is a collar GMT, which honestly is going to be, a lot more usable for the daily for folks that aren't, traveling all the time. A collar style setup is actually going to be quite convenient in most cases. So I think a lot of people really enjoy this. You still get, of course, a rotating bezel, so you can even time a third time zone, which I think is always quite useful. It can get a little bit confusing, but it's nice to have the option there in terms of calculating different things if you do end up traveling, or just you have some important calls or meetings and you just want to make sure that you have everything, of course, all in sync when you are working. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so as you can see, really, really handsome in terms of the colorway here. Kind of reminds me of my Slim Turtle Save the Ocean kind of glacier dial setup. Not necessarily within the texture, but within that colorway with the great anthracite insert there, playing off of that beautiful kind of white, silvery, snowflakey dial. So very, very cool. And another thing I would just have to throw out there that I really appreciate is that the font, the typeface for the numerals there, it matches, which I think is really cool, because I think a lot of the times, for some reason, we find so many different fonts, so many different typefaces kind of all blended in to, let me give this a quick wipe, into single timepieces. It's nice when you see a bit of uniformity, almost like you can't put your finger on it, but I'll just throw that out there now so you can go ahead and tune into appreciating that. So again, those are the types of touches that you do get from enthusiasts, right? And as somebody who starts out as a Seiko modder is clearly a real enthusiast when it comes to watches and watchmaking. So a great passionate story from a guy who really is a part of the community and the enthusiast space, because of course you're not going to see these selling at your local department store. Now in terms of the specs here, 37.8 millimeters in diameter, 13.2 millimeters thick, which some of you might think is quite thick. I think it does an amazing job of kind of splitting up the weight there. You can see a nice, proud, tall bezel, but relatively thin mid case, and then the case back is also quite thin because it is sealed and solid, versus him trying to go with a display case back. So I think that was really smart. Now, a really great measurement here that's going to make a lot of you very happy. The lug to lug is only 44.8, so less than 45 millimeters on the lug to lug, which is going to make this extremely wearable even for very small wrists. Even with the male end link, someone, but the male end link. If you look at this male end link, it does protrude a bit more, but it also is turning down and following the shape. It's not like it's jutting out. So you can see that pivot point is going to be a little bit further out versus a little bit further in. So while not ideal, it's not going to completely make this wear huge by comparison. If anything, it's going to really help in terms of versatility for those of us with larger wrists like myself, so that the watch doesn't feel undersized. So I feel like that's actually a bit of a concession made there. To kind of make this a little bit more versatile and wearable across different wrist sizes. Now, in terms of the bezel, actually, I don't want to jump the gun here. The crystal, let's talk about the crystal first. It is double domed and sapphire, and it is really nice. Check out how legible that is, even at very harsh angles. And when you hear double domed, essentially that just means domed on the under and on the outside of the crystal. And if it was only domed on one side, then you would have a lot more distortion. You can see here, very nice in terms of that super harsh angle there. Not that you need to retime at this angle, but it is nice to see how sharp everything still renders, whether you're looking at the hand stack or you're looking at the indices themselves. Now, getting into the bezel, it is a friction fit, bi-directional, so it can go either direction there. There are no clicks, but it is a nice resistance on here. It's not too easy, but not too hard. And I think that is really nicely dialed in. And with this beautiful coin edge here, a true coin edge bezel, it definitely works out really well. And I think I like that they kind of dialed it into where it's giving you a good amount of resistance, but you do have to have a nice amount of grip to actually actuate this, so you're not going to be moving it over by accident, right? Another nice thing is because it is matted on this very cool loomed ceramic insert, you're not going to get a lot of fingerprints, which means you're not going to be like wiping it off all the time. And even if you are wiping it, you're not turning the bezel by accident because it's not that loose, right? And because you have enough grip here, you can actually get a nice grip and then turn it very deliberately as needed. Now getting into the crown, very standard here, unsigned, but it is screw down, which is nice, which helps you get that 20 atmospheres of water resistance. Solid case back, like we mentioned. And then again, the movement inside is your automatic Seiko Instruments NH34A GMT movement, 41-hour power reserve, and beating at 3 hertz or 21,600 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. You do have at least some nice high polishing on the case back. So if you did want to do any type of custom engraving or anything like that, you could go get that done. But you're not worrying about anything or leaving any prints on the back of your wrist there. Getting into the dial, which I think is the star of the show. I mean, apart from the fact that this is a truly affordable GMT watch. I mean, right now, again, as time of filming, $300, very outstanding. Oh, and if I didn't mention, this is a loaner that was sent in by the brand. But, you know, you guys know pretty much it doesn't matter how I get these watches. I'm still going to give you my same honest take. And there are definitely watches I turn away and I don't feature just because, yeah, I'm not somebody that, you know, wants to. I mean, if I go to a watch meet, I'm not going to go talk about everything I dislike about the watches. I bring the watches that I'm passionate about, and that's what I'm doing. I'm sharing watches that I'm passionate about with you guys. This one definitely does interest me. I love the color scheme on here. Very, very cool layout, very sedate and subtle, but then you get into it and you see really cool nuanced details that I can really appreciate. So getting into this dial, you get this cool frosted texture to it, which some people might say, hey, it looks like frost on a window, or some people might say it looks like washi paper, traditional Japanese washi paper, that is. And that's cool. Either way, it is a really nice looking, well-detailed piece with a lot of spectrum in terms of the shades and the hues that can play off of this dial. Some will say it looks like the surface of the moon, right? There's just a lot here, and it does have a visually optically white appearance, while it could probably be more categorized as a very pale silver. The hands are coated here really nicely, and you're going to have some really great contrast. And the same thing when it comes to the surrounds of those numerals there. So you're going to have, again, a high contrast, which is very, very nice. You're also going to be getting BGW9, 20 atmospheres of water resistance, or 200 meters, 20 millimeter lug width, which is just about perfect, guys. Drilled lugs. So this thing's going to be a strap monster. And with this colorway, you could easily put it on, let's say, an anthracite gray strap, whether it be made of suede or a NATO style strap, or one of my favorites, the anthracite gray genuine tropic rubber strap, which I think would look outstanding on this piece, and really kind of give it a bit of a vintage flair. So with that said, you can see, pretty standard, solid links, solid end links. It's going to have, let's see if we can get it. There you go. Screw in links, very nice. And of course, that 3-link kind of oyster style, very standard. Semi-milled, because you do get the milled folding section here. And then you do get the push button flip lock with 3-position manual micro adjust. And it has a nice taper down to 16 millimeters. So very, very cool. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this thing wears really, really beautifully. Nice and flat, great curves, which do have that high polishing, which help melt away a lot of that weight. You're not going to get, some very simple side slab. You're going to get those nice rounded edges, which do help everything just flow very nicely. But if I do get my wrist a bit too close to the camera, you are going to have a bit of perspective distortion. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low here. And then what I'll do is just tighten up the frame so you guys can get a nice detailed look at the piece while still being able to keep a bit of a truer aspect ratio in terms of the way that this might sit on your own wrist. I do appreciate that taper. Very, very nice there. And you can see this is beautifully centered on the wrist, far from oversized, but teetering on undersized, at least for me on my wrist. But I wouldn't say it falls quite within undersized. It's just a smaller watch, and it's a tidy, but very, very capable watch. So I'm totally okay with it. It is a bit on the smaller side, but not everybody has a 7.5-inch wrist. And you can see I do have a bit of a rounder wrist. So I don't even have like a super flat 7.5-inch wrist. And it still wears really nice. So those of you with smaller wrists, rejoice, because this thing is going to wear just like a glove for any of you. But this is just quite handsome. And again, visually, quite a treat. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom back out. We'll get this piece off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, very nice and very crisp Lume. That BGW9, very cool, very blue, and you can see quite vibrant, and the hands are giving you a bit of kind of reflection off of that pale silvery white dial. Very, very nice. And one thing that really stands out, of course, here is the symmetry, as well as the legibility in the dark, which I can appreciate, especially with how crowded GMT watch dials can get these days. But one thing I always do like to work in, of course, is a bit of low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or maybe just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is really nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to maybe even include some harsh lighting, which typically could expose any types of factory defects that might be washed out in the, pretty much ideal lighting conditions. But you can see here the light just shines and glides beautifully uniform over that brushing, which is really well executed. Great for a tool watch, not crazy hairline luxury levels of satin there, but just very nice and fitting from that perspective. And you can see even in mixed lighting conditions, because of those darker surrounds over the those indices, you are still going to get nice pops of contrast there, even if things can be a little washed out in terms of the lighting. Your viewing is always going to be quite legible, which is really cool. You can see there, even real mixed lighting, it's still, you know, your eye can find something. So, and then even like, let's say something gradual like this, right? Not a lot of light in the room, but you give it a little bit of juice and it's still kind of legible the whole way through, which I can absolutely appreciate, because what good is a watch you can't see? So closing thoughts on this one, really nice on the wrist, great proportions, although it is on the smaller side. It rarely feels undersized. And I think sometimes, you know, you're depending on your perspective, depending on your build. Some of you with larger wrists like myself might see this as being a bit too small, even though the size at 37.8 millimeters isn't the smallest, but you know, you get a smaller dial, you add that bezel there, and then it can visually shrink down that weight quite a bit. I do think with a thinner bezel, a fixed bezel, you can still do, you know, maybe carve in that 24-hour scale. It would appear, I think, a little bit smoother and a little bit more proportional. But I think as it sits right now, it's actually really cool. So in terms of model variants, though, definitely check the site links for current options and availability. And then when we get into comparable models at just over, you know, or at $300, the A4 does undercut quite a bit of its direct competition while still delivering a signature look and a robust construction. So that is pretty nice, right? Like, you're getting a screw down crown, you're getting a reliable 20 atmospheres, right? 200 meters. This can be, you know, it's dive watch tough, but it also has the style and the versatility to be something that you can wear, you know, daily or while you're on your travels, and a great color palette. Again, you could throw this even on an orange strap, tying with the orange. Woo, that'd be pretty sweet. Or you can really make it pop with something white. But I would say anthracite gray. Ooh, yeah, a lot of different options are going to look really, really nice here. So for me, guys, the bottom line is really going to be, this is exactly the type of stylish and capable mechanical GMT enthusiasts have been asking for. You know, and likely because it is designed and executed by a true enthusiast. That's why this exists. People always, you know, I should say not always, and not all people, but a lot of folks within the YouTube comments section like things to be a little bit smaller, a little tighter, a little bit more refined, a little bit more thoughtfully executed, and a little bit more attention to detail, you know, in several areas. And I think it's really cool that you have something that can really fall within that space for not a whole lot of money at $300 on sale or $325 even full price. That is not bad. And yes, there are more affordable options that are going to be out there. You know, if you go quartz, but for an automatic mechanical, you know, GMT, this is pretty nice, especially considering you're getting a very signature look as well as, you know, still retaining full on functionality. So I think it's pretty cool, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Again, big thank you to Alexander James Watches for lending this piece into the channel so that I can share it with you guys. If you like the video, please do it like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.